one thing we've learned from putting on several of these events is that when you're the last thing standing between an audience and cocktail hour, your job is to be really, really brief. So I just want to do two things. Number one, present the results of the survey that we filled out about how quickly different things are coming at us. And the results were actually fascinating. I want to start with the ones where we had a combination of the greatest consensus and the shortest time frames. So here's what this group thought about when high reliability real-time language translation will be routine. We thought the mean was about 2024, and look at that big red bar. Well over 60% of us thought that somewhere around 2020 we would have that. Pretty strong agreement on that. Also, human-machine conversation for customer service and retail will be routine, again, right around 2020. Well over 60% of us said that. The reason I find that amazing is that talking to each other is one of the most fundamental things that we human beings are wired to do. And doing it across languages has been incredibly difficult, essentially forever and ever and ever. And what this group is predicting is those things are about to get very easy for machines to do. When I think about progress in natural language processing, I'm always reminded of Hemingway's great quote about how a person goes bankrupt. He says, it's gradually and then suddenly. And we, as a group, are agreeing that we're moving from the gradual to the sudden period here. Now, where things get a little bit quite different and much more distressing, essentially, is when we thought that AI would increase the median income of workers in the US. Fully half of us said, no, that's not going to happen. That's actually not what the outcome is going to be. And I think we've heard many different viewpoints today on why that pessimism is out there. This group did not agree on that at all, and to the extent we thought that it would happen, it's going to kind of happen later out there, and most of us are pretty pessimistic about that overall. That increases the urgency of this final discussion that we had about policy, about governance, about what kind of society we want to be, because about half of us are thinking we are not going to be the kind of society where, air quotes, the market and AI combine to deliver a higher average standard of living as measured by the money you take home for the median American. And then finally, I'm sorry, two more. Surgeries in the US performed by machines rather than humans. Whole lot of divergence on this one. 40% of us thought that would happen by about 2030, but a decent chunk said, look, that's just not going to happen. The combination of the cognitive work and the physical work required to do surgery is just not going to be achievable by automation at all. And then the most diffuse answers came from the question about when it will be technologically feasible to have completely self-replicating bots. Absolutely no consensus across this question, from 3 years from now to never, with about equal confidence in each of those things. So I found this a really fascinating exercise, both because of where the consensus was apparent and where the huge divergences in opinion across this group were apparent. The only other thing that I have to do is thank a bunch of people who were instrumental in putting this day together. So I'm going to call people out, and if you're in the room, would you please stand up? The IDE team, who was essential in putting this day together, includes, please hold your applause until all the nominees are announced, includes Susan Young, Shannon Farrelly, Devin Cook, who we saw earlier today, Jovi Coney, Tammy Bazell, Justin Lockowitz, and finally, and this is honestly the person who I believe will be the last human being ever replaced by a machine, David Verrill.
So we purposefully left off one person who did the most work for this event and put on a tremendous event, and that's Christy Coe. Please come up here, please. Now, let's have a reception and drink some wine, please. Thank you.